Welcome to Confessions of a Parent Coach. I'm Coach, mother of four, and potty talker, Ann Kaplan. This is the podcast where I confess something from my own parenting and coaching life, teach a lesson around it, and answer your questions. Even we parenting experts are far from perfect, and the real magic happens when we get down with all that imperfection. We get into the gritty side of parenting here, so earbud up and dive in.
Welcome into another episode of the podcast, listeners. I'm excited to be here with you again this week. I want to talk about something that I'm already just going to give you the warning from the very beginning that when I tell you my confession for today, I might start crying. It's a for real example from my life of something that I think I will probably have a lot of emotion around for the rest of my life, probably. But the reason for that confession and the topic that we're talking about today is a phenomenon that happens in our kids called flooding. It doesn't just happen in our kids, it happens in all people. And really, the reason why I want to talk about this today is because it really underscores the importance of that one metric. Remember, there are two metrics involved in authoritative parenting: emotional attunement and control and leadership are the two metrics. This idea about flooding, it really underscores the importance of attunement with our children. Um, and it also ties in something that is just so is like my one of my classic downfalls as a parent, which is like over enthusiasm or zeal around some topic when I'm with my kid. And I think we can all identify with this in so many ways. I think also the concept of flooding underscores not just the importance of attunement, but the importance of neutrality as a tool to enable attunement, to create that emotional safety, to really have a spacious container in our relationship with our children. Neutrality is so important. You'll hear me say, and I'm sure you have heard me already say many times, how important it is for us not to have an agenda when we are interacting with our children. That neutrality is just out of control important in our relationship. And as I kind of tell you this story, you're going to see exactly why. And I think it's going to really be so clear to you, like the importance of emotional attunement, the importance of neutrality, the importance of dropping our agenda. These things, if we can bring them to our parenting, we are parenting at a level, in a way, in an energetic state that most people have never experienced before. Like sometimes I get so excited about the kind of parenting that we talk about on this podcast, the kind of parenting that my clients are learning to do, the kind of parenting that I most of the time am able to give to my kids. Because when I start thinking about like what would the world be like if it were full of people who had been raised this way, it gets me like goosebumps. Like I legit get giddy, to use a real old dork word. I feel giddy about what it would be like if people like as adults had the level of like emotional intelligence, wellness, self-awareness, compassion, skills that our kids have the capacity to learn when they are parented this way. And this story is, I think, going to really hammer that home for you. So a lot of you already know that back in the day, my oldest kiddo was really, really struggling. When he was a freshman in high school, he started really struggling with depression, suicidal ideation, substance abuse, and then all of the fun things that stem from that, like lying, stealing, blah, blah, blah. Every parent's nightmare of adolescence was what we were dealing with Elijah. And I always want to remind everybody whenever I talk about Elijah that I have his full permission to share his story with everybody. I would never talk about things this important and this intense and this personal without having received that conversation from him. But so he, in order to get well and kind of have the reset that he needed and the healing that he needed to go about life as a thriving human, halfway through his sophomore year, we had to make the really hard decision to send him to wilderness therapy. And then after wilderness therapy, he also had to spend some time in a residential treatment center. So this is a really hard chapter of our lives. And if anybody is considering doing this or feels like they might be facing having to make this decision or anything, I mean, absolutely reach out to me. It's, 90% of my clients are just like every day, whatever, we're just trying to do the best we can and we want to have resources and all of that stuff. And then I would say there's definitely plenty of clients I have who are facing these more extreme situations or these really tough decisions that they never wanted to have to face, or they are in a really extreme situation in their family that requires, professional help and support and all of that stuff. So, please know that you don't have to make these decisions by yourself. You don't have to navigate these situations alone. In fact, I would say that the families who do deal with all these things alone struggle 10 times more than the families that reach out for support. So please don't hesitate to do that. That's a little bit of a sidebar. But the other thing that I always tell people when I talk about this is if your child is in this situation, the path to wellness involves it is a family affair. It is not just your child who needs therapy and help and growth and learning and maturity and new skills and all of that stuff. The kids whose families engage in that work with the same, dedication and intensity that they are hoping their child will bring to the process, those are the families who have the success stories. So this example that I'm going to give you is very much in alignment with that. So while Elijah was in wilderness therapy, towards like the second half of his time there, we came out to do a program that his therapy program called Family Quest, which was like 3 days of like being with your child in the wilderness. Older siblings could come too, and you're basically having family therapy 24/7 for 3 days straight and really addressing issues. You do some homework beforehand and you bring all of that stuff. And there was a moment when all of us came to Family Quest except for our very youngest kiddo who was too young. And there was a moment where we were sitting with the therapists, like in this circle in a field, and somehow the topic of, Elijah's hurt, he felt very hurt that my husband and I had talked about how we didn't feel like he had been safe with his siblings. That felt really hurtful to him and it didn't feel true to him. And, my response to him was, I can understand why that would be hurtful to you. But here's why I felt the way that I felt. And one of the examples I gave him was that he had been threatening his younger brother, who was, I think, 13 at the time or something like that. Um, that if his brother came to us and told us what was going on, that he would never talk to him again, that, he would really come after him. He felt very threatened and he put his brother in this very hard position about basically choosing between his brother's safety and his brother's love. And, I brought that up to him and, Elijah said, I didn't do that. And then he turned to River, who was in the circle with us, and asked River, like, did I do that? And River said, yeah, you did do that. And River, and that's all River said. And Elijah, was kind of confronted and realizing, like, oh my gosh, I did this. Not only did I do this thing that's really not okay, but it's so not okay that I have like forgotten sort of my brain had me forget that I did that so that I didn't see myself through the lens of a person who would do something like that. I don't want to see myself as the kind of person who would do that. And this is where the flooding and the sort of agenda stuff comes into play because I was so excited that he had this realization. My zeal, my enthusiasm, my excitement for like, okay, great. Now you see the truth. Now we can learn all these lessons. You can have these realizations. Now you get it. Like, let's teach a lesson around this realization that you're having. So as soon as River said, like, yeah, you did do that, I immediately was like, so see, now you see why I thought you were unsafe. And now you see why this and this is important. And when you come home, this is what's going to have to happen. And, I was like off to the races. I was so like, um, inspired and enthused and excited by the fact that finally Elijah had this like realization that I just like took it and ran. I was like a runaway train with it. And at some point, while I'm just like talking a mile a minute, Elijah kind of gets up from the circle and walks off into the field. And one of the therapists went with him, and one of the therapists stayed with us. And Elijah was so upset by this realization that he had had that he basically had to get away from me. He had to go off into this field. And even though he was so far away, he started crying so loudly that we all sitting in this circle could hear how just ravaged with shame and horror and the confrontation of this situation he was. And the therapist who had stayed with us turned to me and said, did you see Elijah when River confirmed that he had in fact threatened him? And I had seen him. I had seen him. I saw his face get flushed and pink. I saw his eyes break contact with me and look down at the ground. I saw that I almost could see like this wave of heat coming through him. I saw his like energy shift. I saw his shoulders droop. I saw his eyes kind of almost glaze over. Like he didn't hear one word I said after a river confirmed this situation. He didn't hear one more word that I said because he didn't hear one more word I said because he was flooded. He was flooded with emotions. Like if you can even Google like this term flooding, it is literally, I mean, it's the best word because it is exactly what it sounds like. And I'm sure that all of us can think of times when we ourselves have been flooded, whether um whether it was being confronted with something or just really connecting with something or realizing something or a situation occurs that is just overwhelming, and your sort of like physiological reaction to this reality is so all consuming and so intense that there's nothing else that you can accommodate. And but because I would definitely not say that I was flooded in that situation because to be honest, I feel like that would almost be belittling the sensation of being flooded. I was just really enthused and excited and invigorated with this fact that like, oh my gosh, we're finally on the same page about this. Let's go. I saw all of these signs that my son was flooded and needed time and space to process what had just happened. And I didn't care. I just like drove right through that stop sign and kept blip, 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 blip. I had an agenda. I was too excited. My zeal and my enthusiasm and my agenda to get us from point A to point B completely overshadowed my ability to attune to my child. And if I had really been paying attention, what I would have done is just sat there with my mouth shut and just allow him to like sit in the flood that he was in and um process his emotions. And instead of being this thing that felt probably like I was just beating him with a stick while he was down, like kicking him when he was down, honestly, I could have been this person who held space for him and reestablished myself as an emotionally safe space and, validated his emotions and all of the things that was what he really needed from me. And I missed that opportunity because I was more attached to my agenda than I was to my son. And I was not attuning to him. So um, I encourage you to think of times when you yourself have felt flooded. And I encourage you to think of times where you probably were doing that. Like you just went too far. Like you went off to the races and your kid did not come along with you on that journey. And it doesn't have to be something as extreme as what I'm describing at all. It can literally be those times where you get excited about something and it's very clear if you actually are opening your eyes and watching your child that they are absolutely not interested, um, you know, you've lost your audience and you can tell. And that's that attunement piece, paying attention, not just to what needs to be accomplished. What do I want to get out of this situation? What does my kid need from this situation? Because a lot of times we're wrong when we make up that idea. My kid really needs the social skills. My kid, if you'd asked me in that moment what my kid needed, I would have said he needs to realize that, he hurt everyone in this family. He needs to figure out how not to do that anymore so that he can come home and be safe around his siblings. He needs blah, blah, blah. That's not what he needed. He needed just quiet and compassion. That's what he needed. So, if think of times when you just went off on your own, soapbox or your own, excited, galloping journey, leaving the people around you just kind of sitting in your dust like they were not on that train with you. Think about those times and just notice. I mean, the parenting skill that we're talking about, the sort of antidote to this scenario is to just pay attention and put your agenda to the side. That's it. It's so simple, but it's hard. And so this is this is the wheelhouse of a coach, right? Is the stuff that's simple but hard to execute. Simple means just that maybe it's straightforward, not that it's easy. Simple is not easy. So this is why coaches exist, whether we're talking about, a financial coach. Well, it's very simple. Spend less than you earn. Oh, really? Thanks a lot. Fuck you. Am I right? But a coach is the person who's going to help you do that simple but very hard and feels complicated thing. Whether it's, the financial coaching or I hired a coach to help my kids with their college applications. Well, let's be honest. Applying for college is quite simple. All you have to do is fill out the application and push send, but is it easy? No, it is not. And that's why a coach is super helpful with it. Relationships. Oh, super simple. You need to have, this assertive communication and blah, 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 blah. Well, is it easy to have a really healthy relationship? No, it is not. And it's the same thing with parenting. Authoritative parenting, it's quite simple. Emotional attunement, boundaries, and leadership. Simple. Is it easy? I would posit that it is probably one of the hardest things that you'll ever do in your life, even though it's simple. So this is why I have a job. This is why coaching exists. And this is why I encourage you, if you know that you're doing this, if you can just see yourself from that, like you're up in the sky looking down at yourself and saying, oh, yep, that's where I did it. And I still did it, even though I had that. That's where a coach comes in. So I really encourage you to go ahead and reach out, set up that free consultation, reach out to me and just tell me your story and see if having somebody in your corner so that you're not figuring this out by yourself can be the thing that makes the difference for you, can help you tap into not just awareness of what you're doing wrong, but your ability to do it differently. It is in you, I promise. Have a great week, everybody. I will talk to you again soon. Bye.
The episode is over, but there's more waiting for you. You can grab my free workbook, Getting Kids to Listen the First Time, that walks you through the fundamental principles I teach all of my clients and applies them to this very universal parenting challenge. So if you're sick of repeating yourself all day long or just want to learn more about my style, you'll definitely want to go to bit.ly/kidswholisten. And if you're ready to work with me, let's meet. Set up a free call at bit.ly/Kaplan call, and let's create an action plan that gets you exactly where you want to go. And of course, links to all this goodness are in the show notes. Thanks for joining, and I'll see you next time.